Welcome to this edition of the Everlast Power video series. Today we're beginning a multi-part series on how to build a trailer. A lot of our customers are interested in building a small trailer, and we've had some technical questions about various aspects. We're going to cover some of the basics of trailer building with the Trailer Project Build. Now the trailer we're going to build is one of the two I've built for a customer, and one of many I've built this size as part of my own small welding and fabrication business. This trailer is 5x10 with a 5-foot gate. This is a typical small equipment or landscaping trailer that is commonly sold at your big box stores or local trailer retailer. Most states will issue some sort of home-built trailer license for road travel following a visual inspection of the trailer by a law enforcement official. We're going to cover the high points so you can get a feel for the basics. This is not meant to be a strict guide and is for general purpose information only. Beyond that, building a small trailer is relatively simple and safe as long as you follow good welding practices and a sound design. Over time, everyone develops their own way of building a trailer. Remember though, if you don't feel comfortable with your skills to build a trailer or some part of the trailer, don't attempt it. Call someone qualified to do it for you. In a trailer production facility, you'd have a pre-made frame jig to weld the trailer frame. And all you have to do is drop the pieces in and weld. But most people don't have something like this. I'll be using an old table of mine acquired years ago that has seen better days, but it's been refitted with a large flat top, and which we'll use to lay out and weld most of the trailer frame. You don't need a table like this to weld on, as a fairly flat shop floor or even some well-built sawhorses would do. You'll see that this table isn't a perfect solution either, but it gets the job done. To make sure things go as smooth as possible, we've taken a flat disc on a grinder and buffed any pieces of spatter off the table. Next, we're going to prep the table by burnishing some anti-spatter compound onto the table with a rag. This simply makes cleanup easier and makes sure our frame isn't thrown off square or alignment by a stuck piece of spatter. Now if you're using your floor, just make sure that it is swept clean and is reasonably flat. You can always use a shim to make up a difference in floor height. To reduce time and effort, we're going to be using a Bessie 90-degree jig. It makes dropping our parts in and aligning them so much easier and worry-free. It's great for aligning L and T joints and can be used in any position. The articulating wedge part of the clamp allows different sizes of tubing and bar stock to be joined. These jigs are over $100 or so, but there are other brands out there that may be less expensive. For example, this is an Old Harbor Freight 90-degree jig. It's not as well built, but it's better than nothing, and its cost is somewhere around $20. Of course, there's nothing wrong with a carpenter square or a speed square to keep things running true. And we'll even be using these just to double check things on the fly. The base of the Bessie jig is exactly 1 inch thick. We're going to be using some 1x2 rectangular tubing under the trailer frame rails to shim it up to the height of the base of the Bessie jig. To keep everything running true and square, we're going to be making extensive use of sliding bar clamps. Again, many of them are Bessie, some are strong hand, and even a few are Wilton or Colombian. A trailer build like this takes a lot of clamps. So if you run out of bar clamps, just use whatever clamp you can find. The outside frame rails are going to be 60 inches wide, so as you can see, the table isn't quite that wide or long. We'll be using some heavier tubing to lay on top of the table to extend the length and the width of the table as needed to support the frame. You have several choices for building a trailer frame, including angle iron and channel. Angle iron tends to make a fairly flimsy trailer frame, and channel is strong but fairly expensive and is generally overkill for a small single axle trailer. I personally use tubing. Tubing is strong and light. It's also economical. For the base frame, we'll be using 2x2 14 gauge tubing. The outside rails will be a full 10 foot and the two end cross members of the frame will be 60 inches. The remaining cross members will fit inside this framework and should be cut to 56 inches. Another reason I like to use tubing is that it can be square cut and it's so easy to work with. It just makes an easy fit up. You don't have to cope it or notch it like you would with angle iron or miter it like you would with channel iron. So this is just an easy way to butt it up and weld. Here we're beginning to line up the first outside corner. Now we're taking our time because we don't want to rush this. Everything else is going to be built around this corner, so it's going to take some time to get it right. Notice that the end cross member pieces will cap the longer frame rails. This makes it easy to fit and creates a strong interlocking frame. The frame is fairly simple. Think of a 10-foot ladder with 6 rungs. Now when you're using a jig like this, sometimes it takes a try or two to keep everything flushed up, because when you tighten the clamp, it takes out any slack that you may have had because you couldn't get it tight enough by maneuvering things with your hand. Now the joint is fitted up and ready to weld. The gap is gone and I made sure the joint stays in place with the use of a bar clamp. I'm just going to tack weld the joints first on all sides, and I'm just estimating where I want to put my tacks. Just for peace of mind, I'm double checking everything with my trusty square. Sometimes the jig can get a little cockeyed if you don't have everything set up just right. I'm going to be using my trusty power i-MIG 160 from Everlast on this job. Now if you only have a 140 amp 110 volt welder, this should be fine for this job, and it's another reason I like to use tubing. We won't be using much more than 120 amps of our available 160 amps during the welding. As I said, I'm only going to tack weld at this point. In fact, to prevent warping or drawing, I'm going to tack the whole mainframe together before I weld anything completely, and this is an important thing that you need to remember. If you weld everything together at one time at each joint, you're going to have a lot of drawing and warping, and you're not going to be able to handle that. You can see we've gotten our first corner laid out, and we're starting to get the rest of the frame fitted together. Now join us in our next edition when we begin to add some meat to these bones and make some forward progress on our trailer project.